In this video, we're going to talk about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers life cycle risk management emphasis. At the end of the session, it's my hope that you would be able to identify the stages of a project life cycle, if you didn't already know them, and then identify the types of risks that occur during the project's life cycle. In another video, we talked about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers risk management model. In this particular video, we're going to talk about the need to manage risk throughout the project life cycle. This is something that's rather unique to the Corps, that you are a project-oriented organization and your projects do have a distinct life cycle. They begin in planning, grow in PED, give birth in construction, live through OM, R, and R, and many of them are now proceeding toward a final disposition, and that can begin its own cycle anew. So keep in mind that this risk management that we're talking about is essential in each of these 5 stages of the life cycle. Now let's talk a little bit about the types of risks that can occur over a project's lifetime. We haven't exactly settled on what the best language is, but here's how we're going to differentiate them here. There are different ways that we slice and dice this language. So we're going to say there are risks in the community, there are study risks, implementation risks, operation risks, and outcome risks. And we are going to unpack each of these briefly, beginning with risks in the community. There might be ecosystem risks out there. This is a nice little graphic. I see WWF and I'm having one of those moments because all I can think of is the World Wrestling Federation. The World Wildlife Fund has produced this very nice little graphic that kind of illustrates how ecosystem risks come to be and how ecosystem services play a role in our economy. There are flooding risks, a very common risk that you deal with in the community. Storm risks, Katrina, dam safety, and other kinds of risks that people living in the community, people in the United States face. And that is fundamentally what starts your process. Then we talk about study risks. There are a variety of study risks. There can be analytical errors that can cause a wide range of consequences and harms. There are study delays, increases in cost, poor planning decisions. And so basically study risks are things that can happen during the planning and PED process that primarily are going to cost you time and money. There are implementation risks. These can affect schedule, cost, and construction. There are risks that occur during the OM, RR, and R stage. Project performance is very dependent on these types of operation risks. Then there are outcome risks. How did things turn out? And this goes back to those risks that we found in the community that got us started in this process. Have we successfully managed these risks? So they're the risks that we're talking about. Risk management is not a sometimes thing. It's not a tool or a technique that you practice on special occasions. Risk management in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers can become your decision-making framework, the way you do business. It applies vertically and horizontally throughout the Army Corps of Engineers, and that impacts every project, every business line, and every functionality within the Corps. Let's talk about that project life cycle again. Here's a slightly different view. Planning, PED, construction, O&M, and final disposition. What happens during these stages is we are gradually decreasing uncertainty. When a project's life begins in planning, uncertainty is at its greatest. When you reach final disposition, all uncertainty, all major uncertainty, has virtually been resolved. But this comes at a cost. We have increasing cumulative cost throughout the project life cycle. That's always going to be a trade-off at any point in a project life cycle. Decreasing uncertainty is going to mean greater cost. Here we have the same life cycle stages again, and let's overlay those types of risks that we were just talking about. In planning, the risks you're most concerned with are risks in the community. You are worried about study risks, they're documented in the risk register, along with implementation risks, how things that you do in the planning process could affect implementation of the project. This remains a pretty consistent set during the PED stages, but we also add some interest in operation risks at that point. Once you move into construction, risks in the community, implementation risk and operation risks are the primary focus. Outcome risks are certainly still important, but those are not going to be the focus during the construction stage of a project's life. During O&M, there is another shift. We have risks in the community. Study risks, implementation risks have fallen by the wayside, and now we're interested in the operation risks and the outcome risks. And in final disposition, we focus again on those risks in the community and the outcomes. Let's take a little example to try to illustrate how this might work. Once again, this familiar list of the stages in a project life cycle. And notice that flood losses, if this was a flood risk management and ecosystem services project, we have potential risk that would run from the planning stage all the way through final disposition. So they extend through all the stages of a project's life cycle. There are other risks, though. A study risk, if we use parametric cost to screen plans back in the planning stage, that's relatively short-lived over the project life cycle. If we are assuming favorable weather for construction, that's going to be something that's going to be important beginning in PED and through construction. Concerns about levee overtopping, they don't kick in until we have a project in place. We could have an extreme storm event that would be a specific risk at a specific point in time. We might have concerns about specific problems somewhere along the line that would be relatively short-lived. All of these risks would be included in the risk register. The ultimate goal is that a risk register would basically be the story of a project. It would begin in the planning stages and it would be carried through every one of these life cycle stages. Risk can arise in any stage of a project's life. That's what we were just seeing. Some of them are resolved within the same stage. Others extend into one or more stages. There will always be flood risks. There will always be ecosystem risks at any stage in a project's life cycle. That's why the risk register is such a valuable risk management tool. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. So the point, we have hazards out there. Asian carp, hurricanes, risk is everywhere. We don't want to end up in this position. Do you have a process? Do you have a risk management process? And right now, that's an important question to ask. What would your risk management process be right now as an organization, as an agency? And more importantly, are you using that process? So here are our simple takeaway points. Risk management is to be applied throughout the project life cycle. That's planning, PED, construction, O&M, and final disposition of a project. Life cycle risks vary, and they include the risks in the community, study risks, implementation risk, operation risks, and outcome risks.